Hi, my name is Dr. Carmen Brown, and I am a board-certified obstetrician and gynecologist, and I'm currently living and working in Melbourne, Australia. I'm here to talk to you today about getting licensed in New Zealand. So once again, my name is Carmen Brown. I am currently living and working in Melbourne, Australia, and I started out my career in the United States and then moved over to New Zealand after working in private practice for about 6 years. I moved to New Zealand because I wanted, honestly, a better quality of life. I was a bit burnt out with the current system, and I just decided I wanted to try something different. So my husband and I decided a one-year locum would be a good opportunity to kind of recharge our batteries. That was in 2010, and we are still here. So many of you might have read a little bit about my story in different podcasts or interviews, or you might have actually seen the welcome video here on our channel, YouTube. But today I want to talk to you a little bit about one of the number one questions that I get through ExpatMD as far as how to get licensed in New Zealand. All right, so once again, I'm talking to my audience who's more than likely you're a board certified consultant or attending physician working in the United States or in Canada. And so for most of us who are board certified, it's a not very difficult process to get working in New Zealand. Now, this video is specifically for those of you who want to live here more of permanent, or I should say long-term period. Now, when I say long-term, I mean more than 12 months. And so I'm specifically talking to you, those that want to be here for that amount of time. Now, if you want to do a locum, that's a different process. We'll talk about that in a different video. But for today, we're going to talk about how do you get fully licensed in New Zealand. Step one is going to be the same, no matter if you're going to come to Australia or New Zealand, or if you're even planning on doing a locum, and that is starting with the ECFMG. That's the Educational Commission on Foreign Medical Graduates, and that is you. So what they do is they basically verify all your documents to show that you are indeed the doctor that you say you are. So what you'll be doing is you'll actually establish an online portfolio, or something called an EPIC account, and that stands for Electronic Portfolio of your international credentials. This is your opportunity to upload your medical school diplomas, your residency diplomas, and of course your board certification to show, of course, that you are the physician that has been practicing for X number of years in the United States. Now, you will have to upload those documents and they will be independently verified. And that's why that's the very important, very first step that you need to get going as soon as possible, because that can sometimes be the rate limiting step for a lot of people. Sometimes it can take months for your residency coordinator or for your medical school to verify your diploma directly through ECFMG. So I highly do recommend, if you're even thinking about going anytime in the next year or so, just go ahead and get that started. Once you get that done, it is literally done forever and you won't have to do that step again. So that is the very first step. Number two step is, of course, the application, and that's going to be through the Medical Council of New Zealand. Now, one of the great things about Australia and New Zealand is that they have one board basically to rule them all. And with the medical boards, they allow you to have licensure in the entire country. So you don't have to worry about getting state or territory licenses. So that makes it a very seamless, kind of very easy thing to do. So it's just that one application to get certified for the entire country. So with the Medical Council of New Zealand, for those of you, once again, who are planning on staying more long-term, you will be going through the VOC3 Pathway. Now, the VOC3 pathway is the full vocational registration pathway. This will allow you to be fully registered as a physician in your specialty in New Zealand. So I do recommend this is the process that you want to go through, especially if you're planning on staying more long-term. After you submit your application, it will actually be submitted to a secondary board, and that's called the VEAB, the Vocational Educational Advisory Board. Now, the VEAB is basically comprised of people from your particular specialty. So once again, if you're a pediatrician, yours would be submitted through the Royal Australasian College of Physicians Division of Pediatrics. If you're a surgeon, you'll go through the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons. And of course, if you're an obstetrician, you would go through the Royal Australia New Zealand College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. So your application will be sent to your corresponding college. It will be looked over and they will make a decision on whether or not you are someone that can be qualified to be a specialist in the country. Now, this process all up does not take that long at all. So we're talking about, if your application is truly complete, you're looking at sometimes up to 4 to 8 weeks for this all to be done. So this is not a very long process necessarily. So the third step, once you have obviously created your EPIC portfolio, you've uploaded your credentials. Second thing is you've done your application through the Medical Council New Zealand for the vocational pathway. The third step is your employment. Now, this is kind of the semi-easier part because once again, New Zealand is a very small country and there's not sometimes a lot of jobs available. So if you really are keen to come, I would suggest looking a lot for jobs as they come available in your specialty because sometimes they have a tendency to wax and wane. Just recently, I saw 13 psychiatry jobs listed on one of the New Zealand sites. So it just depends on what specialties are in need at that particular time, but I would highly recommend to keep looking. You never know when something will come available. Now, as far as your job, any job that you get in New Zealand, they're usually going to have someone in your department that knows, obviously, you're a foreign medical graduate and that you're going to need some type of supervision and paperwork done for the Medical Council of New Zealand. So that will be taken care of by your job. But just to let you know, your employment will actually have to be okayed by the Medical Council of New Zealand. For everybody out there, pretty much, as long as you're working somewhere in a public area, more than likely you're going to have no problems whatsoever. So once again, your job is one of the third pieces of the puzzle, and having to get your job, give documents back to the Medical Council of New Zealand once you start working. The fourth part is probably the most important part of all of this. Now, once again, you've submitted everything through EPIC. You've done your application through the Medical Council of New Zealand. Medical Council of New Zealand has sent your application through your coordinating college. They've reviewed your stuff and they've made a decision. Their decision is going to say that you're eligible for registration in your particular specialty. That is awesome. Once you have that bit, that means you can have a visa that gets you into the country. You're ready to start working. You got your job. You've come over. You started working. Within 3 months of getting into the country, it's time for your college interview. And that is the fourth piece of the puzzle. Now, the college interview is one of the hardest things that you might have to do because this is where you actually will have a panel interview with a group of doctors from your specialty in Australia or New Zealand, and they're going to go over your entire application. They're going to go over your training. They're going to go over the types of rotations that you did when you were a resident. They're going to go over the types of practice that you've done since you've graduated from residency, the types of case mix that you have. So they're going to go over everything with a very fine-tooth comb. During the interview, you'll be asked questions about your cases, how you handle certain things, and they're going to make sure that you kind of understand your specialty. And obviously, you truly are an attending physician. So that can be pretty nerve-wracking. So one of the things that we do at ExpatMD is we do college preparation for you, college interview preparation. So no matter what your specialty is, we can actually prepare you for those interviews to make sure that you truly are ready to ace that interview, because the outcome of that interview will be very, very critical. The outcome will tell them exactly what types of things you'll need to do in order to get fully board certified in that particular college in Australia and New Zealand. Now, one of the things a lot of people ask is why should they do that? Now, if you're planning on staying long-term, I highly recommend you go through this process, and there's a reason why. Once you get board certified, it opens all sorts of doors. Once you're board certified, that means that you're going to be eligible for all sorts of jobs throughout the country. But more importantly, remember, most of the colleges share boards throughout countries. So that means Australia and New Zealand, they share their colleges. So that means once you're board certified in New Zealand, you're board certified in Australia too. So that means you're now eligible for jobs in both countries. So that can be significant, especially if you're thinking that you might want to locum in Australia maybe one day, or you might want to move to Australia one day, or vice versa. So that's why it's really critical. If you're really thinking about making this a long-term move, I would highly recommend going through the process. So the outcome of this entire process should be full board certification and vocational registration. Now, I outlined it very briefly. Obviously, there's a lot more bits to this, but I just wanted to go over really quickly those important 4 or 5 bits that are going to be really critical for you as far as getting your board certification and full registration in New Zealand. I've outlined this in significant detail in my book, ExpatMD, Your Guide to Living in Australia and New Zealand as a Physician. And we also do regular consultations with physicians like yourself who are thinking about making the move, don't really know where to start, or really need a lot of assistance with getting their applications and everything done. So whenever you're ready, or if you still just are not sure you're in the fact-finding mode, feel free to reach out to us at ExpatMD. And I look forward to seeing you on this side of the world.